Okay, take it away, Anita.
Okay, my name is Anita Gullett. I'm the director of the White Deer Land Museum in Pampa, Texas. And I am so happy that Scott reached out to me and asked if I could talk. You will have to forgive me. I am a historian by trade. So Zoom is kind of a new thing for me. And so forgive my PowerPoint. It did not quite turn out the way I had hoped. But I'm here to talk to you today about a project that we have been working on for almost 2 years here at the White Deer Land Museum and with Fort Wallace in Kansas, and as well as Fall River Productions, which is out of Wichita, Kansas. So I'm just gonna start right off and go into it. And if you have any questions or if you think I need to slow down, because I talk pretty fast, and if Ken has anything to add, since he was just here last week, I would love to hear him add in where he would like. So to get started, the Contested Plains is a docudrama. We finished the third and final shoot here in Gray County last week. We were unable to use the actual McClellan Creek battle site, but we did get to use a Gray County land, which was the Arrington Ranch. And Ken Widener and Ken Spurgeon, the director, and a few others came out a couple months ago, and we scouted out a site that was very similar to the site that Gerald Wright found here in Gray County, which is the Battle of McClellan Creek. So to get started on those who really don't know the German family story, I don't want to give too much away because I want you all to watch the documentary. So a quick synopsis is what I was doing. And as a historian, I think that it is so important to tell both sides of the story. And so what we've done here is we're telling the Cheyenne side, which is important to know that both of these cultures were meeting as one, and it was a clash of cultures. And I've always liked that the Texas Historical Commission used that term and when discussing the Red River War altogether. But the German family, they were not German, that's just their last name. And if you talk to Michael Grauer from the Panhandle Plains, he says Germain. The family that was here for our event on Wednesday, we actually had three descendants from 3 of the different sisters, and they call themselves the German family. So I'm going to go with the family and how they pronounce it. So what we're going to start with is after the Civil War, the German family, like many other Southerners, they had to come out west. And the German family, they load up and they leave Georgia in May of 1862. And their goal was to get to Colorado. I add in, because I'm trying to make sure we see both sides, you have the Sand Creek Massacre in November. And just to touch base, the Cheyenne and the Arapaho and some others, they were where they were supposed to be. And the US military, they led an attack. And it wasn't just warriors. There was, of course, women, children killed. And I found some amazing articles where the newspapers were very upset. It wasn't glorified or thought of a good thing that this had happened to the Cheyenne. And a lot of those Cheyenne, they come down into Oklahoma, which is now Cheyenne, Oklahoma, and they get to Black Kettle's camp. And in 1868, Custer is there and the battle happens. And again, there are deaths, women, children, warriors. Leading up to that, you've got this happening in Oklahoma, and you have the German family coming across, and they get right up to Kansas. And I'm telling this kind of quick because I don't want to give up too much. And then I hope a lot of you do know this part of the story, but up kind of by Oakley, past Wallace in the northwest of Kansas, the family beds down and they camp. And on September 11th of 1874, the Cheyenne attack this family and they kill the mother, the father, 2 of the sisters and the brother, and the remaining 4 sisters are brought into captivity. So my interest, even though the docudrama will discuss more, I'm going to bring this back to your group, back to Gerald Wright, back to archaeology. And the two youngest ones that were 7 and 5, they actually are left out here in the prairie outside the Cheyenne camp. And we know that they were taken captive September 11th, but they are not recovered until November of 1874. And these two young ladies, they wandered the prairie, eating anything they could find, little bits and pieces. I know there's in the book, The Moccasin Speaks, as well as in The Captives of the Cheyenne. Captives of Cheyenne was written by Grace Meredith. It was published in the 1920s, and it was a firsthand account from all 4 sisters. The Moccasin Speaks was published later. It's more of a current book, but I wouldn't say, I can't think of the exact publication date. But it took the documents from the National Archives, as well as the firsthand account, the same as the Captives of the Cheyenne, and kind of combined them. And that actually was a descendant of Julia German, who was one of the older sisters that was taken in. They ate, I know one of the parts of that story that really touched me was that they found a little piece of hardtack, and they had promised to share anything they found. And we're thinking these are 5 and 7-year-old kids whose family have been killed, and they are let go here in the Texas Panhandle, September, October, November. And the one keeps the hardtack and nibbles on it and didn't share it. And she talked about how guilty she felt that she didn't share that piece of hardtack later in her life. But that's all I really want to touch on, the history of the family and the story, because I really would love when this docudrama comes out that you watch it. And so I don't want to give away too much of what we're doing, but what we're really trying, our main goal in this film is really to tell both sides of the story and how these two cultures clashed and the outcome. One of the side notes with the filming was when we did the filming here in Kansas, and we had the German family descendants as well as some Cheyenne, it was about healing. And when we had our wrap party, it was beautiful. Everybody being together and talking about coming together as people and not color or race or religious, any of that. It was coming together as one. And it was a wonderful, I mean, the museum just came alive, and there was so much love. And I know that sounds silly, but it was incredible. And I wished I had had the recorder on where I could have put it on a YouTube page. I didn't think about it at the time. So tying in to you, we've got 2 different things. And I know Scott may want to talk about this later if he's here, or maybe the next meeting. But the actual battle, the massacre sites up in Kansas, there's actually 2 sites, and they're kind of contested. So I know that Scott has been asked, I don't know what decision he's made yet, to go up there and see if they can settle it once and for all, whose land, whose site most likely did the massacre happen on. And I've been to both sites, and I am not an archaeologist, but they both fit the description pretty well from what was described by the girls. So that's to be coming. I'm sure Scott will have a lot more to talk about with that. I'm going to skip here to Gerald Wright, who was a longtime member of your group. And he was a dear, dear friend of mine. When I was a young girl growing up in Amarillo, he used to do lectures, and it would be Alvin Lin, Gerald Wright. There was a handful of them that would come to the library or go to the Genealogical Society. And in my mind, when I was a young lady, I always thought Gerald was some kind of professor. I didn't know anything except for that I wanted to go to Egypt and dig and do archaeology just like Gerald. When I came to Pampa, I was not from Pampa. I was born and raised in Amarillo, then went to Idaho, and then did a tour of Sublette, Kansas with Ken. And when I came to Pampa and the first time I got in the museum, I asked the lady here, I said, how do you have Gerald Wright's stuff? This is incredible, because we have an entire wing of all of his artifacts that he found over his years of doing metal detecting. And she kind of laughed at me and said, well, he went to school with me. He owns the Pack-A-Burger. And at that point, I was off to go order hamburgers and talk to Gerald Wright and thoroughly enjoy getting to know him and have him come in. The amount of information he knew from start to finish, where he found things, how he mapped things out before, he didn't have a phone the same as all of the archaeologists before our time. Mapping, measuring, it was incredible. And before Gerald passed, we took him, the picture that we put in the newsletter, a group of us took him out on his last dig, and we went out to camp at the Big Springs. And he taught me how to use his equipment. And when we came back to the museum, he gifted me all of his equipment and told me to go find the 1872 McKenzie site, which is the only site he was unable to find. And so that's coming too. I really am going to be leaning on Scott and some of the other group that worked with Gerald, because it is, metal detecting is not as easy as it looks, and you want to do it right, and you want to make sure that you're doing it for the historical preservation. So I'm looking forward to this spring and summer working with Scott and learning a lot more about what all of you are interested in and what you all do. So I'm very excited about that. And on top of that, as historians go, this docudrama, Gerald was fighting cancer and he was not able to actually be in our historical part of this documentary. But we were able to get another one of your longtime folks, and that is, we got the last interviews with Alvin Lin, and he was so gracious, had us out to his house, and our interview lasted almost 2 hours with Alvin, and we went through Kit Carson, Red River War. We went all over the Panhandle and beyond, and that in its entirety will actually be here at the museum. And once the film is released, that will be something that we can share with all the groups in the Panhandle who loved Alvin's work and appreciated Alvin's work, because we have the full cut of just Alvin being Alvin and being absolutely amazing. So that's something as we go forward and this docudrama comes out, and we're hoping it's in the editing phases. So we're looking somewhere in the fall. And after that, I hope that, you all reach out and we can share Alvin's interview, because it was absolutely amazing. And he just was so comfortable and talked. I learned more in 2 hours than I probably learned in 10 years just sitting with Alvin. So like I said, I talk kind of fast, and I want to leave it so we have some questions, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how our project came to be. In this picture right here, there's two familiar faces, especially with the Panhandle, Michael Grauer and myself, and this is at Fort Wallace. A couple years ago, when I was new at the museum, I got a phone call from a gentleman named Mike Corey, and he was coming and bringing a group of historians. They call themselves the Order of the Indian Wars, and they were going to do the Red River War, and they all get on these tour buses, and it's amazing. They give lectures, they take you to different battle sites. It was fantastic. And if you're ever interested, I'm putting in a plug for them. They have great newsletters, great websites, and they really are all focused just on the Indian Wars, and not in the Panhandle, all over the United States. And they are amazing historians. So they wanted to come here to the museum to see Gerald's stuff, but I started talking to Mike, and I ended up talking myself onto one of the tour buses. And on that tour bus, Mike introduced me to a lady from Fort Wallace, and her name is Deb Goodrich, and she's standing right next to me there. And Deb is an amazing Kansas historian and just a historian. She loves history. She loves cemeteries. And so we hit it off right to begin with. She invited me up to connect our museums because I think sometimes it's really easy to have tunnel vision where you only see the things that are in your area and you miss the larger picture. And when she and I met, she invited me up to Wallace because the massacre site and the moccasin actually is housed at the Fort Wallace Museum, where we have the artifacts and stuff from the Battle of McClellan Creek. So it was a wonderful evening. It was great to get to meet all those people. And the gentleman standing on the far side next to Michael Grauer, his name is Ken Spurgeon. And he is the director of this film. And he and Deb Goodrich, they wrote the script. And he is the owner of Fall River Productions. And he came up to me that night and asked if I was interested. And I didn't really know if I was. I didn't know him. And I just said, sure, we'll talk. And the next thing I know, I have got an amazing script and an idea presented to us. And that's here at the White Deer Land Museum. This project was funded 100% out of the White Deer Land Museum Foundation here in Pampa. So as this goes, this is one of our local museums that is doing this huge project to really bring light to an amazing story and a story that really needs to be told. But it's big things are coming out of Pampa, and we've got a tremendous foundation and support over here. So I'm very proud of what this museum has been able to do, what our board and our foundation has been able to do. And we also are a county facility. And so what Gray County has been able to do and how they believe in the history of the Panhandle and also believe in the history in a larger scope. So that's kind of how this project came to be. I never miss an opportunity. Just when Scott presented this to me, I was just getting over filming and all the fun we had, but I never miss an opportunity to be able to talk about history, open it up, get to know people. And this is all of our story. History is the story of all of us. Archaeology, it helps legitimize or give people a way to touch history. And I'm very thankful Scott asked me to come here and talk with all of you so that we can think of ways that we can all help the Panhandle shine, whether with history, archaeology, any way that we can. Veronica actually has been here to the museum to work with the kids during our summer camp. It was fantastic. I'm hoping she will come again this year. I love all of us and all of us working together. And I know there's people like Widener that are outside the Panhandle, but history is the story of all of us, all humans. And that's just kind of my pitch on why this project and taking opportunities is so important so that we can get the stories out there and hopefully we can learn and grow from history. Our last right here is where I've got our long-term goals. So the museum here in Pampa, for those of you who haven't been here, it originally started in 1957 when M.K. Brown bought the original land company, which sold 631,000 acres of the Texas Panhandle. And if you're over in Canyon and you're sitting in the Panhandle Plains, T.D. Hobart actually came to the Texas Panhandle actually to be the manager of the White Deer Land Company. So his office is just behind the little red brick wall there. The museum has grown in the years that it's been here. So now we are 4 buildings. We have cataloged over 22,000 artifacts. We get about 3,000 visitors a year, which is huge for a town that has 17,000 and is not really on I-40. You have to be wanting to come to Pampa or Canadian or White Deer if you're coming our direction. So the building that I featured here, when I got here, was called the Annex, but we have changed the name and it is the Red River War Wing. And we're in middle of construction. We have all new shelving, all new lighting, getting it so that we can preserve all the artifacts correctly. And this will be a hub for the Texas Panhandle and the Red River War. We are starting actually at Medicine Lodge Treaty, First and Second Battle of Adobe Walls, all the way through the battle sites to ending at the surrender at Fort Sill. And our goal in this facility is that we will be able to not only tell the full story, but we will be able to connect people to all the other museums. So when we're over at the Battle of Powder Canyon and we're over in that area, we would definitely want to send people to the Panhandle Plains. If we're at Sweetwater Creek, we want them to go over to Old Mobeetie or go to Wheeler. If we're at Lyman's, you know, that's the Pioneer River Valley and over in Hemphill County. This is a way for all of us to come together. We had the building, we had the artifacts. And as of recently, Brett Cruz with the Texas Historical Commission actually donated to the museum the Brett Cruz Red River War Research Collection, which is his 33 years of the Red River War research, is now housed here at the White Deer Land Museum. And so this is very important, not just here to Pampa, but for the Panhandle, and to connect all of our museums together. And you know, the Panhandle Plains, I was a student worker there in college. I got my history degree from WT. And it is a fantastic museum, but it has to tell a bigger picture because it is the largest historical museum in Texas. It has a bigger scope where here we can take a smaller part of the story and make sure that all of the different towns who this is their story can be housed in one place. So I talked pretty fast. I did 27 minutes, but I hope to be able to answer any questions and have dialogue and us to have conversation and input, if that's okay with everyone.
All right, well, thank you so much, Anita. I'm sure, please let us know when that comes out. I know we'd all love to see it.
And we're aiming, like I said, it's in the editing phase. And I will tell you this, any of you who have ever been part of filming, that is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I know Ken Widener would agree with me that it is wild. And it's one thing to see it on TV and know that a lot of work went into it, but to actually see it happen and be part of it, I'm still recovering. We just finished last Wednesday, and I still do not think I have slept enough to, I mean, it's amazing and it's wild. And we used a lot of people from the Panhandle. Here in Gray County, a lot of our riding military were actually my county commissioners. And a lot of the people that work for the county that are ranchers and cowboys and knew how to ride. The Frontier Regiment, they came out here and really supported this project. It was just unbelievable. And I don't think I'm going to be ready to jump off and do another one anytime soon. But it was an experience, and I know our final project is, I'm so proud to be part of it. And I couldn't be more proud of this and of the Panhandle and of the people here, Kansas, all of us coming together. It's just going to be incredible. And I will keep everyone updated on where we go from here. I don't know how long the editing phase lasts. Like most things, this is a very new beast for me. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry, I talk very fast. And so I would love to answer questions or have anything that's there.
Anybody here has questions, you can take the hot seat.
Oh, you're a good group. I like this group. You do better than the kids I have over here. They always ask me questions.
I do have one. This is Mike. I'm off screen.
Well, you can't hear you unless you're right
really?
here.
Okay. Hello, Anita.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So you mentioned Northwest Kansas.
Yes.
And you're still looking for the actual site, perhaps?
Well, So what seems to have happened is there was a site that a gentleman, Leslie Linville, found. And there's that site, which is kind of acknowledged. And then there is the Yunkins Ranch, which is another site that they believe. So there's kind of two sites, and it depends on what side of the fence you are, which one of the two sites you think is the actual massacre site. So I know that Fort Wallace has reached out to Scott to see if there's any way that he could help, where they can either prove that the one that Leslie Linville found is correct, or see if they can find with archaeology and see if the other site that's on the Yunkins Ranch is the correct site.
Okay. I was born up in Atwood. That's why I was asking. I still have family and stuff up there. So I didn't know if it's access or anything. So
Well,
that's why I was asking.
the Yunkins Ranch, actually, where we filmed, I feel and I have no experience. So let me think, this is just from reading the captives and standing out there and looking at the land. And they also believe that they found the indentions to where the family was buried first before they were dug up and moved. But that's out on the Yunkins Ranch up there. And that actually is where we filmed the massacre site, is down by where it is believed it happened. And
Awesome.
What an amazing family. They let everybody out there. They used the land. I mean, it's unbelievable. And when you see it, and if you read the girl captives, their description is very, very close to this spot on the Yunkins Ranch, where the family, I believe, since even the 20s, has believed that that's where the massacre happened.
Awesome. So where did the sisters end up at?
Where did whom?
Where did the four sisters end up at?
They ended up in California, and they did some time still in Kansas, were around quite a bit. Their family, I mean, there's still some in Kansas, one's in California, Seattle, Washington. There's quite a few of them left. The interesting story on the gentleman from Arkansas, he knew nothing about this film. And he had not really been to a German family reunion in many, many years, because most of their generation that knew the sisters had passed. And he was making his way back from Utah, and he and his wife stopped into the museum here, and he comes up and he says, well, I believe my family has a display here. And I'm thinking it's a Pampa person. So I asked, I said, well, who's your family? And he said, Addie German, who was the 7-year-old, that was his grandmother. And he knew Julia, who was the 5-year-old, and he grew up with his Aunt Julia. She lived in the house. So it was neat to get to know him, because he had a firsthand account of knowing the sisters, at least knowing 2 of them. And when this project took off, it was kind of interesting, because there was another, it would be the great grandson of Julia German, found out about the film and then contacted up in Kansas. And then we had the daughter of Arlene Yunkins, who wrote The Moccasin Speaks. Her daughter was here. And so that would be Sophia's descendants, and then Julia's descendants, and Addie's. And when they came, my favorite part about our week of filming was I opened up the land office and I let them sit at T.D. Hobart's desk and do a family reunion. And they all pulled out photos and documents, and they sat in there for hours getting to know each other. And I chose T.D. Hobart's desk because T.D. Hobart actually brought Sophia and Addie out here in, I believe, 28. And they attempted to find the Battle of McClellan Creek site then. And then in 1952, M.K. Brown brought Julia back out here for what they called the Founders Day here in Pampa. And so she signed a lot of the Founders Day pamphlets. And we also have a picture of her with M.K. Brown and other people from Pampa. And she went out to try to find the site as well. And there's this great picture that actually none of the family had seen till they came here this last week. And it's Julia, and she's got her cane up pointing. And she actually was only about 9 miles off from where she was pointing, where she thought she remembered. She was 5.
Wow.
And I mean, I thought that was pretty incredible. And the site here that Gerald Wright found, only the village has been deep plowed. The rest of it has been untouched. It is still the same way that it was in 1874. It's amazing. You can still walk it. You can see the ravines off to the side. It's unbelievable. But where the village was, they deep plowed sometime in the 40s. And when Gerald found some of the canister shots, they were actually lined up like they were shooting marbles, like the farm kids were shooting marbles with the canister shots.
Wow, very interesting. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anita, this is Karen Bopel. Could you have, could you have Ken talk just a little bit about his costumes and how they played into what was going on? I think that's an interesting part also.
I'd love to have Ken talk.
And here I am.
He will, if he's not eating potatoes.
I'm finished eating potatoes, and I'm not going to talk about costumes, but there's 2 points that I'd like to address that the last guy asked about. And one was somehow I lost the screen here. You guys hearing me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you and see you.
All I have is Karen Lopel's iPad on my screen. So, anyway, the guy asked about the site up there on the Smoky Hill River. I've not been to the Linville site, but I was all over that site there at Youngkins. And Randy took me over where he found those indentions a year ago in the spring. He had never seen them until last spring because the cattle had grazed it down hard. And you can see the trail come through the Smoky Hill Trail, or the BOD trail, right through there. Right off of it, about maybe 20 feet, there's a piece of limestone. And then beside it were the indentations. And the limestone, there was also later a settler built a house right there, a limestone house. And at first I thought, well, that's just part of the house. Somebody carried it over there in 100 years. But it's not laying flat like somebody would drop a piece of limestone. It's set into the dirt vertically. And so just out of curiosity, I took my boot and I just kind of pushed on it, kicked on it. It's down in that dirt quite a ways. Somebody went out of their way to put that piece of limestone in there perpendicularly, right beside the trail and right beside these 4 indentations. To me, it makes perfect sense that that's somebody marked it there. But that's what I saw. And like I say, I've never been to the Linville site. It's only a few miles west of there, about 8 miles, I believe, but I've never been there. So if that clarifies anything. The other one was about the German descendants. And can I tell just a little short story on that filming part of it, Anita?
Yes, sure. Yes.
I can't remember the guy's name. I think he was from Ohio, maybe. He was the oldest of the German descendants.
Lee.
Not the fellow from Spokane or Washington, but the other one.
Lee Hampton.
Lee Hampton.
Mhm.
And I don't want to give away part of the show, but when the girls were brought in and returned to surrender or to be recovered by the army, and they were filming it, and the girl was giving her lines, and it was emotional. I don't get too emotional, but kind of. But then I looked over, and I believe you were with the guy, and you had your arms around him, and he was just shaking. And that was very powerful. to see that he thought in his mind that was his family being returned. And it really was powerful. So that's that. I don't talk as fast as Anita, so. So I guess I'm done.
You didn't address any costumes.
Oh,
They were amazing.
a couple of years ago, Spurgeon, I had worked with Spurgeon, my son Tate and I had worked with Spurgeon on Bloody Dawn years ago, 15 years ago probably. And at the time I told him if he ever wanted to do any Indian stuff to keep me in mind. A couple of years ago, he got a hold of me and it kind of snowballed from there. But my buddy Curtis Carter and I agreed to do this. And the original raid was, I believe there was 17 warriors and 2 women, I think, on the original raid up in Kansas. And so we tried to, we had quite a bit of clothing, but we had to make more and make more and make more for 17 guys and 2 women. So we've been kind of working on this for the last couple of years and drifting that way. COVID hit, all sorts of issues. It was put on the back burner. And then last summer, there was talk about it again. It was going to be filmed in September, then finally October. And when we got done up there, some of the guys did not show up. There was only, we equipped 8 guys and 2 women, so 10 total. Everything's good. And I thought, well, going into winter, we got 10 of them taken care of. The rest won't be bad. Then all of a sudden the numbers start increasing and increasing and increasing. And about 2 weeks out, I suddenly realized, well, there's 2 pretty important people we don't have dressed. And that would be the 2 German girls that were captured and kept down in Texas Panhandle. Because in my mind, we'd already filmed them. They were in civilian clothes. I don't know why I didn't have enough sense to realize that by then they were wearing Indian dress. So 2 weeks out, Curtis is sewing dresses. So we got it all covered, but I think we did, there was 19 total that we decked out. So it was a pretty good challenge. And I really think they're going to be as good a Southern Cheyenne of the 1874 timeframe that you'll ever see on film. A few things worked in, obtrusive things that were beyond our control, but other than that, it should be pretty good. Now I'm done.
And I know that sometimes Chris Larson is with your group, and he also is with the Frontier Regiment, and he took the time and spent, I don't know, over a year looking at costumes, looking at uniforms, and through the Frontier Regiment and a grant that he received, he actually purchased and did all of the military soldiers, and he did an amazing job. He also, some things that you couldn't avoid is when you have people who are reenacting and they already have their uniforms and they want to wear them. He did laugh that there were more officers there than there should have been. And good historians will notice that just on their patches on their arms. But I can't tell you how many loads, much like Ken and Curtis. Next time, if something happens, they need to get a U-Haul trailer, and I think it would help them all because it was a ton, and they did an amazing job. Both Ken, Curtis, and then Chris Larson up here, because he really was outfitting all the military here for this shoot here in Gray County.
Yeah, I had never met Chris until last fall up at the shooting up north, and he came up, and another one that was integral was Kelly Baker, of course. Yeah. Chris, and I didn't really get to know Chris until a month ago when I came down and scout that site. Chris is a great guy, and that one evening I had about 30 minutes after the rat party. He was out at the barn and sorting uniforms, and I had a good chance to visit with him, and I really like that guy. But you're right, Chris Larson was key to this. I also want to, there's a couple other people I've got to give credit to. Karen Karen Vopel. She helped Kurt and I. We do photography. She does photography with us for a business. She's incredible. She came and helped, did hair, clothing. Curtis's wife, Eleanor, came and helped. And my wife, Meg, and Lacey, my daughter Lacey and Tate, came and helped set up teepees. Without them, there's no way our part would have worked. So anyway, give a shout out to Karen, wherever she's at. So now I'm done.
Thanks, Ken.
You're welcome, Karen.
It really was an amazing whole project. I look forward to the end. One of the other things that came out of this was with Scott is looking for the 1872 battle site with Mackenzie that happened here in Gray County. It hasn't been found, but we have a really good lead. And so I'm hoping that Scott will jump on board with that. He's interested. They have looked, I know Gerald spent at least 15 years looking for this site. And from what I've seen from the maps and where I think my good lead is, it looks like maybe they were 6 miles too low. And we're going to try to go up high and just waiting for landowners' permission. And that way we will have gotten all the sites that are here in Gray County. Just things to come with doing archaeology and the German family site. And I'm sure that Scott has a lot of others, and I'm looking forward to trying to get more involved with him and learning all I need to know.
Bro's the guy to go to.
Yeah, he is.
Well, if we have time for another question, hi Anita. You said that you put a lot of attention into telling both sides of the story. So can
Correct.
you speak a little bit about, I guess you made contact with the Southern Cheyenne, how that worked out? What is, this, at least, in this area, this was a really, it's interesting to know how they reflect on this experience. Does that even fit into their, is it?
You're asking difficult questions.
Well, maybe that's why I'm stumbling on figuring out how to word it. But it's part of our lore here. But
right.
Is it like a blip in their history, or is it something that they also are commemorate is the right word, but acknowledge?
I will speak briefly on what I know. I will tell you, on our historians and our people speaking, we did get Chief Gordon Yellowman, who is with the Cheyenne Nation. He actually is one of our historians speaking about the Cheyenne in this docudrama. With some of the Cheyenne, I think this is very hard, just like when all things in history happen, and there, a lot of times, here I'm going to stumble back with you. A lot of times there's judgment passed, and I know that there was one of them that really felt strongly that they thought of the girls like family. And he had agreed to do things, but then once he got into it, he did not want to continue because he didn't think it would be representing, even though we were doing by fact, we're still going to have those things 150 years later. But I'm hoping with telling this story, because that same gentleman also with the family would take the breakfast out in the morning and do a ceremony where they buried it for healing and doing good things. So, and that was a beautiful thing to watch. It was watching, we would lead with a prayer. He would lead with a Cheyenne prayer. Sometimes in history, you have to go through the hard stuff, and you have to discuss the good and the bad and the ugly, so that we can make sure we understand he'll come together to go forward as a group together. And so that's what I saw. I know that there were more things on both sides. It's a really hard story to tell. And when you're trying to tell both sides, I actually will use an example from one of my board members. I have a board member and he is amazing. And he's always done reenacting. He's at his office. He has all these reenacting pictures and he'll tell you, well, I died of gangrene right there. Or, here at Bull Run, I died right there. And he's an amazing historian. And when he would come in and do talks at the museum, he would dress up and he would do the military side and he would discuss the saddles, the weapons. And when he would tell the German story to the kids, I would always get nervous because there was a lot of his opinion and his emotion in telling the story. And not that that's wrong, but at the same time, when you're trying to tell history, you need to do an even tell both sides. Try to keep your opinion out of it so that people can form their own opinions with their life experience. He went to the second shoot up in Kansas and he came back and in front of our board, he said, I was wrong. I now see a side of the Cheyenne I didn't see. And that I think sums up how this is telling both sides, because he has had it in his mind for all these years that it was one way, and now he sees it very differently. And to me, I think that is the best way I can answer your question. It has been very tough trying to balance that out and make sure that everything is represented as historically accurate as you possibly can.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
yeah, you're welcome.
Can I kind of dovetail in on that, Anita?
Sure.
What you're talking about there, I run into all the time as a white guy. I'm totally white. I've got no Indian blood at all. But I've been portraying a Southern Cheyenne guy for years. And it's really tough road to hoe because of all sorts of terrible things that happen on all sides. And to me, it's just so important in history to study the facts of what actually did happen and realize that there was terrible things throughout history. It doesn't matter what group or time period or people you're talking about, horrible things happened. And it's so unfair for us today, in my opinion, to judge people of the time period, because time period, the culture was different. Cultures on both sides were different than they are today. And hopefully we've grown and learned a lot and don't make the same mistakes. But it's a really, I think you did a really good job of covering that, Anita. That's a really difficult question to take on. And I think it's going to be a good show, and I think it'll cover it in a fair way. So that's it. I'm done again.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any more? I really appreciate everyone listening. I am glad that I got invited. Next time I need to come over there and be in the room.
Definitely. Although you'd still have to be in front of the computer somehow.
Oh.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Anita. You're fantastic.
Oh, so are you.